Hello, everybody. Welcome again to Friends Occasionally Not Disagreeing, the Fawn Pod, the Fawn Cast. It's your favorite spot to hang out with all of your friends. And I'm here this week with Joe and Brett. And we're talking about some music this week. We got another top 10 episode for you today. Interesting band we chose for tonight's episode or this morning's episode, I guess, depending on when you're listening to this. Let's see what the guys have been up to here first, and then we'll jump into all things music. I got Joe on the top of my screen today. Joey, what you been up to?
Ooh, not a whole lot aside from listening to some Pink Floyd over the past few days. I guess
Way to spoil the lead right away, this
I'm so sorry.
guy.
I don't, you don't know why I've been listening to Pink Floyd. Maybe it's just related to the amount of drugs I do.
I did Pink. Were we supposed to do Pink Floyd?
Yes. No, I don't know. Maybe.
That's why I was
Anyway,
confused about the drummer. See?
all
Oh.
right, cut.
Yeah.
Rewind.
Oh, it's Dave
All
Coulier shout out.
right.
Let's keep it
What?
going.
One thing I wanted to mention is a game that my wife and I have had for like several years and have played over several years, but I don't think I've ever mentioned it on the podcast. It is a card game called Guillotine, which is a really simple game to play. It's a lot of fun. It's also weird because it's like a very light, I would say probably family friendly board game, but it's based around the French Revolution, and theoretically it is played by taking people's heads as they get up to the titular guillotine. Um, but it's super fast to learn and it's a lot of fun to play. So I recommend checking that out if you see it anywhere. That's really all I've got.
I guess that would what why Cody's muted? What is
Are you okay over there, Cody?
what's Cody
Yeah, I'm
doing over
fine. Probably.
there? I guess that makes me next. I also have not been up to much this week. I was trying to think of anything I've even really done. Uh Nothing. I've been trying to finish up Starfield, which I know you've been. Did you finish that, Joe? I know you were playing it.
I need to get back to it. I put like a bunch of hours into it and then just kind of got sidetracked.
Mm.
It's I don't know. I mean, it's I like it, but it definitely did not grab me nearly as much as some of Bethesda's other games.
Yeah, I
So I don't
probably
know
would
where you're
agree
at
with
on
that.
that.
I think I have like over 100 hours in it actually at this point.
Oh,
I played it a ton and I enjoy it, but yeah, I'm just trying to get that wrapped up so I can move on to other stuff. Um, and last night I went attended my first daddy-daughter dance
Ooh.
with my daughter since I have not previously been a daddy or a daughter, so I wasn't able to go to these before. And
Well, glad it was your daughter you went with.
so um it's kind of funny because like we uh she was kind of like a bit nervous about going in the first place, and then we got there and she just ran around with her friends and I just sat at a table the whole time. I didn't actually dance at all. So it was just to take a kid here to go play with her friends, and dad sits around and looked at his phone.
fun.
But
It's
there it
funny because
is.
I watched a movie last night about a dad and his stepdaughter. I mean, no, not that.
What? Cody, what have you been up to?
Wow. Look, a few things here and there. Last night we played some board games. Two, I guess, which I had never played before. We played the board game adaptation of the video game series Stardew Valley, which was really interesting. It's a co-op game, so that's kind of unique about it. Where you each have a role, essentially doing one of the things you would do in the video game. So I was the farmer, essentially. My son was the miner, and my wife was the fisher, and my daughter was technically the forager, but also was kind of helping farm a little bit and run around and give stuff to the museum and the community center and some other things as well. So it did kind of simulate the video game pretty well, I would guess. I actually haven't played it, but I've seen it played quite a bit. My kids have played a ton. They're actually playing it right now because they're so inspired back to get into it because of the board game yesterday. But it was unwieldy for time, I will say. It advertised 40 minutes per player, and it took us significantly longer than that to get through it. Now, granted, we were joking around and distracted here and there, but it took a huge chunk of the day, maybe 4.5 hours, I would say. And we lost spectacularly, like didn't even come close to winning the whatever there is 10 goals or whatever. I think you have to finish in the game. I think it's 10 things you have to complete. We probably got through like half and maybe like 75% of the other five. So we'd have needed a few more turns, I think, to win. But it was an intriguing game. It was kind of fun. It's definitely a lot of randomization with how you play it, and setups different each time. And, what you pull out of the mine and the fish and everything's different every game. So definitely one I'll play again. Pretty excited for that one. I wouldn't put a rating on it yet after just the one play, but it was fun. And then yesterday night, my wife and I tried our first game of Terraforming Mars, which is not a new game, but we bought it, I think, a year ago in that giant Barnes and Noble half off sale when they were, for some reason, trying to get rid of all their board games to make room for puzzles for Christmas. Still don't really understand that, but and that was pretty fun too. We played a really competitive game. You get a corporation in that one, and you kind of have a strategy slightly tailored to whatever your corporation's strengths are. And Karen had one that was like really big on building things and using like space technology, and mine was really big on like building structures on the planet and different things of that nature. But it was a lot of fun. Really fun to see how the board changed, and that was also a really long one. It was like 4 hours as well. Probably partially because it was the first time we played it. I think we could go a little quicker next time, but also really fun. She beat me by a point in the end. Kind of pissed off about that, but and then I also just want to do a quick shout out to a follow-up from a previous podcast. We were rating our most anticipated movies of 2024, and I think my number 3 movie may have been The Electric State with Millie Bobby Brown that comes out this year. And I ordered the book version of that while we were recording, and I just finished reading through that as well, and really enjoyed that. Like a really fucked up dystopia America cross-country road trip with a girl and a robot, which I admit I did not fully see the ending coming on that. About 10 pages left into the book, she starts to say some information which I will not disclose here because I imagine it will be the same twist I would imagine in the movie when it comes out, and I don't want to spoil that for anybody either. But really enjoyed that. Art is beautiful in the book, so I'm really hoping the Russos capture that as they are creating this movie adaptation of it, because it was really fun to look at. Dark and grim, but also really kind of whimsical and odd at the same time. So those would be some of the things I have been up to. Yeah. So let us get into today's episode. Top 10 songs by the artist known as Pink.
What?
Now, she started as more of a rap artist, but later on was really big into pop.
I like that one song she did with the guy from Fun.
Oh, yeah. That's a good one.
It's a good one.
That is a really good one. All right, we're talking about Pink Floyd tonight. Pink Floyd, another of our iconic bands here for our top 10 list, joining the highly prestigious small list of bands we've done this with. We'll make sure we send them their plaque in the mail here shortly for making this great honor of making it onto our top 10 podcasts. But in the meantime, we're going to check out the Pink Floyd as they were known for a couple of years. Or was it the Pink Floyd Sound, or the T-Set, or the Spectrum 5, or Leonard's Lodgers, or the Screaming Adams, or the Adams, or the Megadeths, or the Sigma 6. These are all former band names they've had, ladies and gents.
And you said you didn't have any notes.
I'm checking Wikipedia. But then they were just simply known as Pink Floyd, and that's what they'll be known as forever now. They are from London, England. Genres for them, I mean, everybody knows Pink Floyd, but they have them listed here as prog rock, of course, art rock, psychedelic rock, space rock. That sounds like a made-up term. And experimental rock as well. Can
Space
also
rock,
say,
also known as meteor. What?
Oh, this is a band that has been kind of, I think we could safely say, sporadic in their active years, where they kind of are together and then disappear, and then some iteration is back again. But finishing up our intro here, I guess, let's just do a little more. They have, I think we counted 15 proper albums that we glanced at, reviewed, or listened to for tonight's podcast. Starting in 1967, The Piper at the Gates of Dawn, A Saucer Full of Secrets, 68, More from 69, Umagumma, 1969, Adam Hart Mother, 1970, Medi, 1971, Obscured by Clouds, 1972, which I chose all 10 of my songs off with PS. The Dark Side of the Moon, 1973, Wish You Were Here, 75, Animals, 77, The Wall, 1979, Final Cut 1983, A Momentary Lapse of Reason 1987, The Division Bell 1994, and The Endless River 2014. And I read through those very quickly, but if you are at all paying attention to dates on those, that basically means in the first 8 years they were together, they put out 9 albums, and then one every 2 years after that, and then the breaks started to get considerably longer towards the end.
I believe they actually formed in 1965. So the first 10 years they were together, they put out 9 albums.
From the first album to the 9th album.
Not what you said. Not what you
Asterisk.
said.
There we go. Famous group members. Let's kick it over to you guys. Who do we know in this band?
The one guy and the other guy.
Yeah.
I mean the two best known members who are like also the main songwriters and kind of musicians in the band would be Roger Waters and David Gilmour. I feel like they're probably the best known.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe a little bit of Sid Barrett also early on.
I feel like, I mean, honestly, I feel like more people probably know of Sid Barrett as kind of like, they know like the legend of Sid Barrett more than they actually know
The legend.
any of his contributions to the band.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
you know, he kind of legendarily had some not so great times with some LSD and had a lot of mental issues that were at least partly tied to that. And parted ways with the band, I believe, during the recording of their second album.
Yeah. He was only at the first album, I believe.
Yeah.
That was one thing
And,
I just in the way I listen to stuff just to get prepared for this was I typically use YouTube, and so you get all the YouTube comments section,
Mm.
and there were like a lot of I saw quite a number of comments where people were like, Pink Floyd was always Sid Barrett's band, not Roger Waters. Roger Waters is like, you know, like basically putting him like down, and I was like, you guys.
that's
You guys are
wild.
damn lucky you had Roger Waters because Sid Barrett was a madman and
Yeah.
not in a good way.
It is, I mean, I guess we can, maybe talk more about this when we get into the songs, but it is interesting that even though Sid Barrett was in the band for such a short period of time, his shadow sort of continued to loom over the band for a long time after that. I mean, they have like multiple albums, and like certainly some of their best known songs are written about him, even though he had like long since been out of the band by that point.
One of those things.
Yeah.
One of those things. Um, let's see. We briefly mentioned just genres here, but in terms of like, how would you guys describe the overall Pink Floyd sound? Which is kind of something I tried to do in the beginning with some of my notes, but I find them a very hard band to put into words, to be quite honest.
I mean, I think their sound definitely changed over the years, at least like certainly from, I would say between like their early years in the 60s until probably Dark Side of the Moon. I feel like once they got to Dark Side, they sort of started to develop kind of a sound. Prior to that, honestly, I was surprised a lot of their like earlier stuff to me sounded kind of just like late, like mid to late 1960s rock music. Like it
Yeah, like
reminded me a lot of like,
typical 60s, yeah.
yeah, like it reminded me a lot of like the Kinks or like even the Beatles in some ways. Like
Yeah.
I was surprised, how similar to music of that time it sounded. I guess going back, I would have assumed that they were always kind of more experimental and prog rocky, but I don't feel like that was really the case.
Yeah, I so I I was actually pretty shocked that um they had 7 albums before Dark Side, which I had no idea that was the case. When I started listening to these, I was kind of blown away by exactly what you're talking about. Like the sound was very stereotypical 60s. And I even like one of the things I wrote down was like it was so I wrote down like a lot of things just as I was listening, just things popped in my head. I wrote it down and just one of my favorite ones I wrote down was it sounds like a cover of a Beatles song, but performed by patients at a mental institution.
That's
Um,
fair.
and it's a lot like it's just kind of crazy. It's just like light drumming and like some light electric guitar and like maybe some bass, and then like there's a harpsichord, and you're like, what? This is Pink Floyd. What's going on right now?
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy how far they evolved through the years.
Yeah, I definitely echo what you guys said. Those early albums were very hit or miss with me as a listener, but some of it I actually had written down as well that sounded very Beatles-esque, which I actually have a song on my top 10 tonight that I put, This Sounds Like the Beatles, which is both the highest compliment I can give them and also surprisingly shocking if you know my love for the Beatles. So there's that.
I feel like that's the
Um,
highest compliment you could give the Beatles.
that's true. Maybe so. Somebody else did your music better than you. There you go. But some of those early albums were just like so chock full of sound effects and stuff, which is funny because I definitely know Dark Side maybe the best of all of them, but this idea of like they used a lot of sound effects in that album, but these early ones were like they had like a 3.5 minute song that was just sound effects on a couple of these, and I was like, what the hell am I
Mhm.
listening to right now? Like, I think I
Yeah, and they're just
finished
like
one with schizophrenia, but it's cool.
jamming weird sound effects, just like out of nowhere. There's like bells, and then there's like birds chirping. And you're like, what the fuck? Where'd that come from?
Yeah.
Right?
It's like, yeah.
One thing, kind of on another note, but one thing that I thought was interesting is that at least two of their earlier albums were soundtracks to movies, which is a
Right.
thing I didn't know had happened. I mean,
Yeah. So a
not,
lot of those, just not to bump into, but like a lot of the songs are just, they don't quite feel like songs because they're intended to be
yeah,
used for like
it's,
a movie
yeah, it's
background kind
really
of.
like a lot of it is just kind of like instrumental,
Hmm.
like, so I mean, I honestly, it's weird to even, I mean, they're listed among their discography, but it's kind of weird to even think of them as like proper albums, I feel like.
Mm,
This was a band that I think I suggested this one, but when we started to listen to the songs for this one, I found out quickly this was a band that I both did know better than I thought I knew in some cases and knew far less than I thought I knew about this band as I listened to all this stuff, that's for sure.
yeah.
When did you guys like start to listen to Pink Floyd, or is this a band you've been a fan of for a long time? I was kind of curious on that.
I mean, I
Well, oh,
definitely like just growing up, uh, I listened to a lot of, we didn't have like a ton of radio stations here. And, but there's a big classic rock station, and that's what I listened to for a lot of my middle years. And, it, yeah, I just like the Pink Floyd would be on the radio like several times a day, and so, I couldn't even estimate how many times I've heard some of these songs, like hundreds probably, you know,
Yeah.
and, so it was just like, just a part of like my early teen through like late teen years.
yeah, I honestly have kind of a weird, complicated relationship with Pink Floyd growing up. I don't know if you guys have this thing where like your parents have certain biases against certain things, and so for at least like a portion of your life, you just kind of have that instilled in you.
Sure. Yeah.
Hmm.
My mom had a brother who was always a really weird dude, and definitely liked to smoke the marijuanas and was not great at holding down jobs and things like that. And I remember it always being like a thing my parents talked about that like he was really into Pink Floyd. And so in my family, it kind of became associated with, like bad behavior or like, Pink Floyd is something that like losers are into. Um, so that was always like this weird bias I had in the back of my mind, at least until I was like a teenager. Um, Another thing is when I was like somewhere between like 8 and 10, but definitely far too young, I stumbled on my brother and one of his friends watching the movie of The Wall. And have you guys seen that movie?
I have not.
I've not. No.
I mean, obviously the album itself has a lot of like really kind of dark material. It's, literally about someone having like a mental breakdown. And the movie has a lot of like really disturbing, twisted imagery in it. And so like seeing some of that at that young an age kind of like fucked with my head. Um, but my brother actually was super into Pink Floyd, which whether that goes along with the conception that losers are into Pink Floyd, I'll leave that for other people to interpret.
Well, to be clear, are you into them? Just so I
Well,
know how to make a judgment on that.
yes. So,
Okay, then I believe it.
um, I mean, as I got a little bit older, my musical taste started kind of developing, and because my brother was into Pink Floyd, a lot of their music was in our house, and kind of natural for a younger sibling to kind of pick up some of their older siblings' tastes. So I just kind of by default, I just started listening to more and more Pink Floyd, and I mean, a lot of their music has played an important role in large sections of my life. I mean, I would honestly say David Gilmour is probably at least partly responsible for my love of guitar. I think he's probably and arguably one of the most iconic guitarists of all time.
Would you say he was like 60% your inspiration and Tom Morello's the other 40?
No, it's like 1090.
Oh, okay. Wah, wah, keep going. Wah, 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 wah,
Anyway,
wah, wah.
but yeah, they've just been kind of a force in my life, I guess, in both directions for positive and negative, since I can remember. Although weirdly, for as much as I have enjoyed their music, I realized that it had kind of been isolated to like 3 or 4 albums. I had listened to bits and pieces of the earlier stuff, but had never really delved into it. And then kind of on the other end, I was really shocked to see that they released an album as recently as 2014. Like I just had no idea that that was a thing. I think I had kind of assumed that the Division Bell in '94 was their last album. So, um, I mean, we could talk about that, but anyway, yeah. What about you, Cody? What's your relationship with them like heading
I've
into
never heard
this?
of this band before. No. I would just do two parts to this. One is, and it's funny, this is kind of, you're talking about family a little bit here, Joe. I would say if when I was a kid, I can vividly remember my mom having three cassettes laying around all the time, whether it was in the car or on the counter in the house or whatever. And they were Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction, um, Def Leppard Hysteria, and Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon. So those were the three that I always like visually saw. I wouldn't say I really got
How old is your
into
mom?
she was born in 59, I think. So whatever age that makes her, apologies, mom. There we go.
I'm just wondering because like I think my mom is like 2 years older, but definitely not into as cool music as that.
Right. She still listens, I mean, even to today, she still listens to like hard stuff in the car when she drives, which is kind of
Nice.
surprising. But so I was kind of raised into like rock and roll more or less. But it's interesting because I definitely like knew the songs on Appetite for Destruction and Hysteria, and probably less so by far on Dark Side of the Moon. But those were the three I can remember always laying around, which is, the funny thing about that is you talked about family, but like I bet if I called her and said, like, what were the cassettes you always had that you always listened to or that were laying around, she probably wouldn't remember any of them, like I do. Like it was a big impression
Yeah.
on me as a kid, but
Mm,
to her it was
yeah.
just like something she had laying around that she'd listen to, which is, it's kind of funny to think of how that works because maybe the same thing's happening with my kids. I don't know. The second time I want to mention here that Pink Floyd jumped into my life, though, And if Matt Hudson was supposed to be with us tonight as well, so shout out to Matt Hudson. He might have been able to provide more details on this event if he were there, and I don't know for sure if he was. But it was in college, and they were advertising a Dark Side of Oz night in the TV room for everybody to go and sync up Dark Side of the Moon with the Wizard of Oz. And I went to that and was just, I mean, the experience kind of blew me away, like of just how the lyrics matched up so well with that movie if you time it right. So shout out if you haven't done that yet, look up how to do it online and prepare to get trippy. I'm almost inspired to do it at home here again just because. And then I actually did that same event. I stole it and did it when I was a resident advisor later on, a few years later at college, and introduced it to other people. But so I definitely knew Dark Side of the Moon better than most of their other music by that point in time. With again, just, lyrically, I was looking through a lot of these songs and I wanted to listen to all of these songs at least once through with the lyrics up, and with just what I ended up having time wise didn't happen for all of them. Some of them, yes, but not all. And their lyrics kind of strike me because there are some songs that have really short lines and like quick rhymes and things of that nature that I think are really brilliant. And then other songs where they seemingly try to do the same thing, and I just look at the lyrics and I'm like, well, that's a bullshit line. Like you just pulled those 6 words out of your ass to rhyme with the line before you, and that doesn't mean anything. So I think lyrically they're a little hit or miss with me. Um, and I was also quite surprised listening through these albums to hear how many were about war, because I had no idea they had like so many vocal opinions about the war experience.
I mean, by they, I think it's almost entirely Roger Waters.
Okay.
He has a lot of feelings, especially well, so his father was killed in World War II when he was like 5 months old, and that is just in like a lot of his songs.
That would make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I that was something I came across as well. And it didn't it's something you don't always think about, I guess. It's just like it's there and you don't really put it two and two together. But like especially these bands from the 60s are kids who grew up like recovering from World War II, especially
Yeah,
in England. Like
that's true. Yeah.
they had things like real hard, as they're trying to rebuild shit. Um,
Yeah.
and I think um, a lot of this, especially in the later albums, The Wall in particular, are really, really influenced by that.
Yeah, that would make sense, I guess. Yeah, Vietnam, you got, I mean, all these early bands, you got World War II, Vietnam.
Mhm.
Oh boy. Oh boy. All right. Anything else here we want to say on the onset about these guys? I don't know. Brett, if you feel so inclined, feel free to try to put together a Best Song of the Night award, but I don't know if that's going to be feasible or
I
not.
Yeah, I did have I had a spreadsheet prepared in the background here. I can keep track of stuff. So
Okay, very nice. Yeah, I
This
was
guy on the ball.
gonna do a shout out here too. I was telling the guys I just made a big playlist on Spotify with all the songs I had left here, which for our listeners, for the like diehards who actually listen to all our top 10 lists here on Spotify or wherever you're at, iTunes or whatever. Um, Taking one of these, I love these music episodes, and I've said this before, like I get to see these musical artists in like such a way that I never knew before and hear all their different parts to their sounds that I never knew before, and I love them. But it is so much time and effort that goes into these musical ones. We haven't done one in a while, but 15 albums straight through, even if you're just skipping a few songs here and there by previewing them, which I tried not to do on these, but and then re-listening and then actually trying to rank all these things, like it's a long time that goes into this top 10, that's for sure. And even when we get to like saying what our top 10 are, I'm always second guessing myself as far as like, did I put these in the right order? Do I have the top 10 that I should have on the top 10? So but that's just to say, I really enjoy these music episodes, and I feel like Brett and Joe have been here for quite a few of them as well. So this has been fun times, fun
I
times.
like music.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
I do think it's maybe worth mentioning before we get into the list. This is something else that we talked about in our chat. I feel like with Pink Floyd, maybe more than any other band I could think of, it's really hard to pick out 10 individual songs because so many of their albums, if not all of their albums are like concept albums that are
Mm.
really made to listen to like as one,
Yeah.
cohesive experience. And I was really surprised by, I mean, I don't want to give any spoilers, but there were one or two albums at least that I really enjoyed the album, but I had a hard time picking out a single song out of it to, kind of highlight because it feels like the whole is more than the sum of its parts.
Hmm. Yeah, I would agree with that. So
Yeah, I was trying to look back at my notes. There was it was if I can find it here, Animals. I think it was the one I like. I really enjoyed the whole album, but like none of them stood out as like something that I could fit into the list. But I was like, this is really fun to listen to. It's a great
Yeah,
album.
I really specifically had trouble with that one too. And I agree. I mean, that's one that I had really not listened to before. I had heard like, short bits and pieces, but I think isn't that only like four tracks, but at
it's
least two of
five.
them are super long.
Yeah, like there's one's like 17
Like,
minutes, the other one's like 10 minutes, and then
yeah,
like in total it's like almost 40 minutes of the album. But
yeah, but yeah, I mean, as an experience, like altogether, like there's a lot of great stuff in there, but I had the same problem where it's like, I don't know if I can say any one of these tracks is really gonna make my list.
mhm.
Yeah, I kind of agree with some of the stuff you're saying here. One of the I'll just kind of mini spoiler for my list as well, but the album I had the hardest time getting through was Ummagumma. I just wrote in my notes, "Dear God, please no more." That
Uh-huh.
was a tough one.
I had several notes on that one as well.
Um, all right, well let's jump into this today. We said no honorable mentions, but does anybody have honorable mentions?
I followed instructions on that.
All
I do
right,
not.
very good. Well, let's jump in here then, and we will start with one honorable mention from me.
Boo.
Just falling off my list, and the only thing I picked off the album, so I'm just throwing it out there for this. I enjoyed the song Nirvana from the Endless River, 2014. I thought it was really nice that they dedicated a song to Kurt Cobain, and no, I'm just kidding. It's spelled differently too, spelled like nerves. But I did enjoy that one. It's all musical. But there's another thing off that album I really pulled out that I particularly enjoyed was that. But anyway, let's get into the top 10 proper here. You guys want me to go first? Somebody else want to go first?
I'll jump in.
Do it.
My number 10 is a track off the album Ummagumma. It's one where like, musically it's maybe not the strongest, but I think the lyrics are really profound. It is several species of small furry animals gathered together in a cave and grooving with a pict.
I'm not writing that whole thing down, just for you know.
How
This is what honestly,
many colons are in that?
if I had had an honorable mention, this would have just been my honorable mention. But since I was told that there were no honorable
Yeah, for
mentions,
sure.
it's on my list proper. This is a weird song. It's literally just Roger Waters fucking around for like 6 minutes, making weird sounds and stuff.
Hopefully not with furry animals.
It's mostly on my list for nostalgic reasons. This is one that I discovered when I was like an early teenager and just thought it was the funniest thing on earth to try to torture people with it. Also, the title is just fun to say. So I had to throw it on there for nothing but pure nostalgia's sake. It's really not a good song, but I
Did
do think
they
it's interesting.
did they say the title in the song? Out of curiosity.
There are no actual
There's
lyrics in the song.
Oh,
It's
okay,
I was gonna say
okay,
literally
there's no
okay.
words.
it's literally
Is that
just
one of the
Roger
sound effect albums?
Waters. Yeah, it's literally just Roger
Ah.
Waters making a bunch of sounds that are supposed to approximate different like woodland creatures
Mm.
for 6.5 or 7 minutes, I think.
Good Lord.
I did, yeah. I wrote down that at least was I give it credit for being creative in trying to do something unique, but it was just like felt like a jumble of just randomness.
That's funny. All right. You want to go second, Brad, or you want me to go second?
Sure, I'll jump in
All
here.
right.
Okay. So due to a numbering error, I will give a quick shout out to Brain Damage / Eclipse from Dark Side of the Moon, which fell into 11th because I had two number 5 somehow. But my number 10 proper is going to be Money of Dark Side of the Moon. And for this one, I wrote down that kind of falling into what we just talked about there was this one is a great example of Floyd learning to use and take sound effects and oddities from their past songs and actually make music with them, not just a bunch of random disorienting noise. And the thing that like right from the start of the song, like is that bass line that's like really catchy while still being like really simple. Just kind of really kind of sets the song off the right path there. And one thing that I wrote, you know, there was a lot in the. I'm not sure when exactly it started, but like there was like a point where they started using like a fair amount of saxophone on the albums, and then like it kind of kept going through with the remainder. But I just wrote down that the saxophone of the song is really good. It's enjoyable. There's like just enough of it to be like make it unique and but it's not like overpowering or like oh my god, stop playing it. Stuff. So that's mine. Number 10 is Money.
I definitely liked the sax on a lot of their songs as well. It's
Yeah.
nothing like a good sexy song. Could use a bagpipe maybe a little more here, but that's all right. All right, my number 10. Surprising. Oh, we should also mention we had some loose rules tonight for making songs. I was very strict with mine in that I only chose what they labeled as an official track here. So my number 10 is Brain Damage, full stop. And this is off Dark Side of the Moon, obviously, but great song. This is there were a couple in contention from Dark Side that I was thinking about here for the top 10. This one, though it's not named as such, is the one where they do say "I'll see you on the dark side of the moon" in the lyrics, which is, the whole album's kind of named after the idea here. It's also just batshit crazy with like the lunatics in my head and the laughter in the background and minor sound effects in this one as well, and just really one that kind of gets stuck as like a little earworm and kind of gets stuck in my head when I listen to this. But just like this one, just enough to make number 10 on my list, Brain Damage.
Nice. Well, I'm gonna give a little bit of a spoiler for my next couple picks here, in that I was surprised at the number of post Roger Waters tracks that made my list. And it starts with my number 9 off of the Division Bell, which is Take It Back.
That's a good one.
And I thought this song was really interesting because to me it honestly sounds more like Joshua Tree era U2 song than it does a Pink Floyd song. It's got a very Edge-esque delay effect on the guitar. Like it literally, musically, it could literally be a U2 song. Um, it also feels kind of like poppier and more upbeat, I think, than a lot of Pink Floyd songs do. And that's one thing that I kind of noticed with the post Roger Waters stuff, is that a lot of it, I don't know if they were purposely trying to make songs that were more radio friendly or could be singles, but I feel like there are several tracks off of the couple post Roger Waters albums that feel more like songs that could be played on a radio than like the earlier Floyd stuff. And this is one of those. But I just, especially in the post Roger Waters era, I feel like to a large extent it often feels to me like they're trying to just sound like Pink Floyd instead of like innovating or trying anything different. But this song feels different. I mean, it feels like U2, which I guess is a good thing or a bad thing, but I appreciate that it sounds a little bit different than a lot of their stuff. So there you go.
Number 9 for me is Learning to Fly off of Momentary Lapse of Reason. And after that, so I think like there's a lot of songs from Floyd, especially in like the middle years, that it kind of makes you have like this feeling of like being in a dream. But like for some reason, this song like especially seems to jump out with that kind of feeling for me. Like you're just kind of like floating along with this song. It probably has a lot to do with the vocals, which also on many Floyd songs are um they're I'm not sure the quality, how to describe it exactly, but like it doesn't, there's not a lot of emotion in the vocals. It's just kind of like presented. Um and um Also, I wrote down this song sounds like very 80s, which is a little bit, I mean that whole album was very kind of 80s sounding, um but yeah, this one just kind of stands out as well. And Cody's muted again.
My number 9 song is the only song I chose off of this album. This is from the album, I'm not even sure how you pronounce this, Abiza Bar. Well, this is not the album. This is the album's more, but the song's called Abiza Bar. I had never heard of this one, but this is the one that I said sounded very Beatles-esque to me, um, with some really good guitar solos in this one as well. You know, one of the things that really struck me looking at these songs lyrically, all of the Pink Floyd songs, is how few lyrics there are on a lot of the songs, for them being like 5 or 6 minutes long. And then I'd look at the lyrics to be like, make sure I kind of get an idea what they're going for on this one. And they'll be like, 150 words. And I'm like, what? It's a 6 minute song. Like, how did they stretch out 150 words for 6 minutes? But this is a good example of that one. It just sounds really good 60s rocker. Like this one kind of encapsulates that 60s sound, I think. This was from 69 is when the album came out, I guess. But it definitely sounds like it fits in that time period. And this is Abiza Bar, if that's how you say that. But really enjoyed this one. Kind of a sleeper pick here for me on number 9.
All right. I guess that brings us to number 10. Yeah, wow, I can't talk. Guess that brings us to number 8. My number 8 is off of A Momentary Lapse of Reason, and it is On the Turning Away. This is another one that felt a little more unique to me among their catalog, in that it's kind of a ballad. It's like it's got a really kind of stripped down sound. The focus is mainly on the vocals, which I think is kind of rare for Pink Floyd. Um, I like the message behind it. It's kind of like a call to action protest song. It's maybe a little bit on the nose, but the overall message seems to be that you can't turn a blind eye to injustice. You have to do something about it. I really like David Gilmour's vocals on this song, and one thing I realized in this re-listen in general is that I feel like, even though I feel like Roger Waters is probably a better songwriter and certainly a better lyricist, I think I like David Gilmour's vocals better on the rare songs where he sings either lead or like co-vocals. He has this more almost like ethereal sound to his voice. Um, but I think I tend to prefer it to Roger Waters a lot of the time. But yeah, overall it's just kind of a nice, chilled song that makes you want to do something about all the wrongs in the world.
That's deep.
Yeah, man.
Number 8 is Welcome to the Machine off of Wish You Were Here. And this song for me, it always kind of just it evokes this almost borderline unpleasant feeling of like dread or desperation, which it's like it's like it's just kind of borderline, like it's enjoyable for that reason, because it's like so different, like it has brings out such different feelings. And it's like this, it just kind of like takes you out of your own little world and like deposits you like somewhere else, it feels like. um and it really is just, yeah, I don't know, the feeling that I get from has always been so different. I'm not sure that I even really know any other songs that give me that exact feeling. And for that alone, I had to put it on this list. So it's Welcome to the Machine.
Good choice. Good pick.
Good song.
All right, my number eight's on the same album Brett was just on, which PS should also give a shout out here to those iconic Pink Floyd album covers as well, because they really stand out. Like the famous albums really have those iconic things.
I'm wearing my Barbenheimer t-shirt right now, which is a recreation of the Wish You Were Here cover, but with
Oh,
Barbie and Oppenheimer.
can we see it? Try it again.
I don't, it's gonna cut out.
Oh,
Oh, there
look
we
at
go.
that. There it is.
Nice, nice.
Oppenheimer's the one on fire from the album cover here.
Yeah.
My number eight is Wish You Were Here from the album Wish You Were Here. Really not a lot of lyrics in this one, but they're kind of those deep philosophical lyrics of like just this yearning for missing somebody. And a lot of notes in here talk about how this one probably has a lot of Sid Barrett in it as well, as they're again lamenting their friend who's not there anymore. And one random note it has here in the lyric website I'm on says at 42 seconds, you can also hear Richard Wright in the band cough. When he heard the song's recording later, the coughing inspired him to quit smoking. That's kind of
Well,
interesting.
That is interesting.
But this is just one of those ones, it's really a soft little, I don't know if I'd call it a ballad, but kind of speaks that way, I think, to the audience. You got a little acoustic guitar in here. This is just a soft one that I think is really relatable to anybody who listens to it. I'm thinking about somebody who's just not there anymore, somebody you miss. Um, yeah, that's Wish You Were Here, number eight.
Nice. All right, number seven. My number seven is another track off the Division Bell, and it is Keep Talking. I this is a song that I have heard a number of times over the years, but in kind of revisiting it for this podcast, I just really fell in love with it. Um, the music on it is just super atmospheric. The main sort of guitar groove, I feel like, kind of gets you moving and also sets a certain tone. It opens with a quote from Stephen Hawking,
Mm,
kind of done with his electric voice situation. I believe the story behind this song is it's actually a clip of Hawking that was used in like a TV commercial, and David Gilmour found himself crying watching the commercial, like because the quote was so moving. So he incorporated it into the song. Um, I also this song to me, I feel like a recurring theme in Pink Floyd's music is in exploring a sense of like isolation and like introspection, and often a feeling of kind of like being trapped inside yourself. And that's the feeling I get from this song. It's almost like being stuck inside your own mind and not really being able to communicate with other people. And one really interesting thing to me with the way this song is recorded is there's a section, I don't know if you guys are familiar with something called a talk box, which is like a device that you use with a guitar. Like Peter Frampton is famous for using one. Um, it's
okay.
basically the way it works is it basically you hook your guitar amp into this box and it forces the sound from the guitar through a tube that you put in your mouth, and you put that next to a microphone. So you can alter the sound from the guitar using your mouth.
Wow.
So people like Peter Frampton is famous for using that to actually like speak, and it sounds like the guitar is talking. But I think it's used really interestingly in this song because there's a section that's like a call and answer section where there's background singers saying like, "Why won't you talk to me?" And then the response is done through a talk box, but Gilmore's not actually trying to make words, but it kind of sounds like someone talking, but it's not. And I just think it's an interesting effect in this song, which is about like trying to communicate but having a hard time. Anyway, I just think it's a really interesting song.
Yeah, another good one. Was on
Hmm.
my. Never mind.
What?
What?
Number
Nothing.
7. What? Oh,
Number
what?
7. Um, Number 7 for me is Cody, you had mentioned specifically that you were listing tracks only,
Yep.
despite several of them in a lot of these concept albums being like joined tracks. Um, I did not follow that. I went with so for number 7 for me is the combination of Empty Spaces and Young Lust off the wall, which the wall specifically has like several points where the tracks bleed into each other and are meant to be listened to each other. But um, this for me is it actually has a really similar vibe. The Empty Spaces track at least has a really similar vibe to Welcome to the Machine. It just kind of like really sets this tone, a little bit of ominous kind of feel to it. And then what's really awesome about this one is that it transitions into Young Lost. It kind of just like bursts in with the vocals, and it's like one of those moments where it's just kind of like it's like a goosebumps moment, like every time you hear it. It's just so good. And this is one of them where it has David Gilmour's on the vocals in this one, and it it really kind of in comparison to other songs where a lot of the Floyd songs are a bit more downplayed in the vocals. He's like really kind of like pushing his limits here, it feels like. And that often really just kind of lends a lot of weight to a song to have those vocals kind of stand out like that. And this one here I wrote down also, it has just really great guitar work in the latter half. I just really enjoy the kind of solo on that one. It's number 7.
Another good one. My number 7 is a song I'm going to stay on the album Wish You Were Here from 75. And this is Have a Cigar coming in at number 7 for me. Just kind of seems to be like a backlash song against like the skeezy music industry of the time here. Maybe as they're going from like the raw 60s to like the more produced 70s. I love the line in here. The band is just fantastic. That's what I really think. Oh, by the way, which one's Pink? I just don't really know you at all, but just how can we exploit money out of you is kind of the
Mm.
whole thing behind this. Apparently behind the scenes, I was just reading about this one. They recorded the song twice, once with Roger Waters doing the vocals and once with Gilmour doing the vocals, and they couldn't decide which one to use, so they apparently took the appeasement route of going out and getting a featured vocalist for this one, Roy Harper, who has one of the few featured vocals on some of these Pink Floyd albums, and he sang the song, and they were both happy with the middle ground, apparently. So
Hmm.
that is, I will admit though, I sometimes have a hard time hearing the distinction in some of the singers with these songs.
I was gonna say that like I would not have guessed that was one of the main two.
Yeah, I, I
So
I mean I knew that it wasn't, but like I feel like it could have easily been like Roger Waters. Like
right,
it definitely
exactly.
sounds in their wheelhouse. But I mean, I honestly think the fact that it's someone who's not in the band kind of adds to the song, since it's, from the perspective of like a music executive who doesn't know who they are.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I could totally see it. So this is Have a Cigar, my number 7.
All right, my number 6, oddly, is the track that follows Brett's twin number 7s on the wall, which is One of My Turns. Um, I mean, as Brett said, and we've kind of discussed, the wall is really made to be listened to as one overall piece. But this is one of the tracks that's always kind of stood out to me. It's kind of a turning point for the character where I think the story element is that he's trying to like reach out to his wife while he's on tour and can't get in touch with her. And so the song is kind of lamenting on a relationship that's falling apart. And then he subsequently kind of lashes out at this girl that is with him. But I really honestly just like a lot of the lyrics in this song. I think it captures the sense of being in a relationship that is kind of at its end, and just the emptiness and loneliness that can bring about. And I do also like the turn that happens. Like it feels like it kind of comes out of nowhere. It's definitely different sonically than the way the song starts, but that again, I think feels the sort of mood. It captures the feeling of, the mood swings that you can have when you're having a breakdown in your life, which is kind of what the whole album's about. Yeah, just really, really moody piece, and I like the lyrics a lot.
Moving on to where am I at here? Number 6
Almost to your
is
number fives.
um number 6 for me is Hey You off the wall. And I like this one a lot because it feels like there's a lot more emotion behind the vocals again, which as I said isn't necessarily a typical thing for Pink Floyd, so it kind of like stands out a bit for me. Um and as pretty much all these songs are just songs that I've heard many, many, many times through my youth. And I've just, have a spot for them there. I also wrote down that this one just has a really great guitar solo, which I mean, most of the songs on the wall have really good guitar work, but I really like this one especially. So number 6 is Hey You.
Hey, you. Oh boy. I'm gonna stay on the wall for number 6 for me, but I'm gonna drop a bombshell appropriate for the wall. You ready for this, Joe? You ready for this? You ready to cry?
Oh, just do it.
Are you ready to cry? I'm gonna rip the band-aid off fast. Are you
Just
ready?
do it. Just
All
do
right.
it.
Number 6 for me is the only song I picked off the wall for my top 10. Comfortably Numb. Nothing else off the album made it. There was a lot in contention. They all got chopped at the end. I got Comfortably Numb at number 6. This is kind of another slower ballady one, just kind of like Wish You Were Here. This is kind of a back and forth vocal setup in this one, basically between Waters and Gilmour, kind of going back and forth between the verse and the chorus. And I think this is one with the lyrics here, and just even the title, Comfortably Numb, is really applicable to so many situations. I mean, they are kind of literally in the song going through like somebody being sedated basically and just kind of, vegging out into like this state of reduced consciousness almost. But I think, this could work for so many things, just especially as like people in society that just get so numb to some situation or some way that something is set up, and then that's just kind of how they live their life at that point. And in the last chorus here, Gilmour is kind of singing about when he was a child, he caught the glimpse out of the corner of his eye, but he turned to look and it was gone. The child is grown, the dream is gone, which is just again kind of this idea of, I don't know, I think probably what they're saying is as we grow into adulthood as well, we kind of lose some of the abilities to see the world the way we saw it when we were kids, and now we've kind of settled into this like accepted acquiescence, if you will, of just adulthood, and this is what it is, and we're just fine. We're living with this new thing we're in. But so that is my number 6, Comfortably Numb.
Way to steal a lot of the things I was going to mention much further down the road.
Well,
Spoiler alert. All right, number 5. We're in the top 5, ladies and gentlemen. My number 5 is actually the only track on my list off of Dark Side of the Moon,
ooh,
and that is Breathe.
in the air.
Breathe in parentheses in the air. Um, I mean, I feel like you guys have mentioned some other tracks off this album that are probably more well known and or were released as singles. This one has always just kind of been a favorite to me. Once again, it's David Gilmour singing, which I was just looking, I'm kind of surprised that the lead vocals on Dark Side of the Moon are pretty evenly split between David Gilmour and Roger Waters. It actually looks like Gilmour is featured more than Waters, which is kind of rare for this band. Um, but I just really like everything about this song. It's kind of a more relaxed vibe. There's some good bass work. There's some pedal steel guitar, which you don't hear a lot in Pink Floyd. but it works really well in this song. Um, and I mean, I think Brett, maybe you mentioned the bass line or bass work on a different song earlier. That's one thing that kind of stood out to me revisiting Pink Floyd, which makes sense given that Roger Waters kind of was the primary creative force behind the band and he's the bassist. But I was struck by how many of their songs have like very pronounced bass parts and bass lines where it almost feels like as much of a lead instrument as the guitar and other things, which is not something that you really hear a lot in a lot of rock music. Usually the bass is just kind of like buried in the background, holding down the rhythm. um but yeah, I mean, it's kind of a central piece of one of the great classic albums of all time, and it's my number 5.
All right, I have another song off the wall, which is pretty common here, and it is "Run Like Hell." Um, and I think one thing that stands out from this song, like right away, is the pacing feels much faster than most of their work, and it kind of just like really gets you going like right away. Um, it just the beats are quicker, and it has much more of like a almost like a hard rock feel, rather than their typical stuff as well. But just a really good enjoyable song overall. I enjoy. Again, this is another one where it seems like the vocals are a bit more um pronounced, or they're not just like setting the tone. It's like it's well, it is setting the tone, but not in the same way, I guess. But um yeah, I'm not sure what else I'm saying about this. This is "Run Like Hell," number 5.
That's another good one, man. The ones that pop up that I had, because I think I had 35 originally, I said on my contenders list and chopped it down, and I'm hearing some of these as we're going through, so that's good. Glad they're getting some shout outs as well. My number 5 is maybe one of my deepest cuts here after the Ibiza Bar down at number 9. My number 5 is off the album Obscured by Clouds from 1972. And it's the only song I chose off that album, but I got all the way up here at number 5. This is called Childhood's End. And this is a song that if you haven't listened to it or are not sure even from which one I'm talking about here, the first about 45 seconds into this song, you're going to kind of be like, is this a good song? And then it's going to kind of take off from there. And I just really like the instrumentals in this one. I really like the way it sounds. It's got a rock that comes into the song as you keep going, which was another thing we talked about in some prior podcasts, which is like we like when the songs build kind of as they keep going into them. And I think this one kind of fits that. Maybe not the traditional introduction of instrument here and there, but definitely builds as it goes on. Also kind of a unique song because has 3 verses but no chorus. So that's a little unusual also. And good guitar solo in the middle. This one's not marked, but I believe this is a Gilmour sung one, if I recall. But this is Childhood's End, deep cut here for my number 5. Song I had never heard of prior to doing this, also, I will add.
That is apparently written and sung by David Gilmour.
There we go. All right.
All right. Number 4.
Wrong.
Number 4. My number 4 is Another Brick in the Wall, in parentheses, part 1. What?
What?
What is this madness?
I know. Everybody's familiar with Another Brick in the Wall, part 2, which is a great song, but honestly, I feel like I've maybe heard it too many times in my life. I mean, I know Hudson kind of made the argument that it's all one song, and you could easily make the argument that it is all one song. The two halves certainly do fit together, but if we are taking them as individual tracks, I think I prefer part 1. It's
Whoa, whoa,
just
whoa, whoa, whoa. Are you neglecting part 3? What's this 2 half stuff?
anyway, I like part 1. I love how moody it is. I love the guitar tone behind it. There are not very many lyrics at all, but it's to me it feels weirdly more personal than Another Brick in the Wall Part Two. It's again Roger Waters reflecting on, his father going off to war and getting killed when he was very, very young. But it just captures this feeling of longing and also kind of dread that is throughout a lot of their music. And I just really like it.
Weirdo.
I know.
Number four for me is again off the wall. It is Comfortably Numb. Uh, and this was when I struggled to write notes for this one, and I think it felt like there's a lot of songs uh from Floyd where I didn't necessarily know why I enjoyed it so much. I just know I do. It's I couldn't pick out a lot of specifics on
I
it,
feel like, as
but
the kids say, a lot of their songs are just a vibe.
right. That's a good word to use for it. Yeah. Um, I did go right down this one that it feels like the way the vocals are sung, just the style of it, it's another one where it kind of feels like it kind of takes you out of your own space and into some other space. And it is just start to finish, it's just really enjoyable. I just really like the rhythms of this one, and another just great guitar solo on this one again. So number four for me is Comfortably Numb.
Just a great guitar solo, he says.
At least you
For
knew how
sure.
many halves there were to the song. All right. My number four, we're headed back to the dark side of the moon. When it comes to our fans here at the Fawn Pod, there's either us or them. There cannot be no middle ground. This is us and them, the dark side of the moon. I don't know what to say about this one. It's just it's a really fun one again. That's kind of got a little war theme going through it, which is shocking. I know it's probably the only song that has a war theme to it, so there's that. Um, Other than a couple albums that I did not rank on our list tonight, but this was, I don't know, I just like the some quality about how the vocals hit with kind of that really fantasy like background music that they managed to produce in this one has always really attracted me to this. Um, and I don't know, this is I just like the way this one sounds. I don't know if I can say too much more than that. It's again kind of quieter, kind of stands out maybe a little bit on Dark Side because it's kind of one of the quieter ones. But a lot of saxophone in here also, which I'm a big fan of. We mentioned already. And yeah, that's all I'm gonna say here. Us and them, number four for me.
Well, that brings us to the top three. My goodness.
Crack the knuckles. Let's do this.
Let me ask you guys something.
Ooh,
Do you remember when you were young?
yeah,
You shone like the sun.
no.
Shine on, you crazy diamond. Parts 1 through 5 is my number three pick. This is off of Wish You Were Here. And I mean, I don't really know what to say about this song. I feel like it's iconic. This is one of many songs that is about Sid Barrett, but I feel like, as with a lot of Pink Floyd songs, it is clearly written about something or someone specific, but it still feels like it has a universal meaning, or at least you can kind of take your own meaning away from it. Musically, I love this song. I was kind of joking about it in our chat yesterday, saying that the great thing about this song is that every time you think someone's about to start singing, you get another guitar solo instead.
Yeah.
Which,
Definitely one
I
of those
mean,
songs where you're like trying to hit the part where he comes in and you just like,
yeah,
I
you're
missed it
like,
again. I
oh
missed it again.
no, oh, now it's a synth solo. I mean, I joke about that. There is like a really long intro on this song with kind of a combination of guitar and synth solos, but I don't feel like the song feels overly long. Like, yes, there is a long time before it gets to the lyrics, but it works for me. And I think it's because it does feel, Cody, you were saying, and something I've referenced before is that I like songs that feel like they're building towards something. And I do get that sense in this song. Um, I also just, the main guitar riff is super simple, but I feel like it's iconic. Once it kicks in, it's just like, all right, it's on, this is happening. And yeah, I mean, in my mind, it's just one of the kind of quintessential Pink Floyd songs.
Right, I have at number 3, song off Dark Side of the Moon. It is Time. And here's it again. This is what like I mentioned before, like they started using sound effects like appropriately in music. And so like the various clock sounds that they use at especially at the
The
intro of the
freaking
song
alarm clock sound.
is it really kind of it sets the pace. It also just kind of sets a vibe for it. The guitar is really good in the song. I love that a lot. And the line, the time has come, the song is over. Thought I had something more to say. Um, as it goes, kind of just stuck with me as just it's interesting, and also it's it also like because the song's not actually over at that point. So it like
Yeah.
it's like this extra thing is like, wait, you said it was over, it's not over, and there's like a whole other verse after that. But I enjoyed the song. I've always loved this song. This is Time.
Great choice. Okay, my number 3 is officially the highest ranking I gave to a song I had never heard before by Pink Floyd. And this one, I heard it and I was like, wow, I really liked that. And then it kind of kept creeping up as I was cutting songs out, and then it made my top 10. And then I was like, well, how much do I like this song? And then it kind of kept going up the list, and it settled here at number 3, which is pretty crazy. This is off the album The Final Cut. Yeah, that's a real one they had back in
Wow.
1983. And it's the only song on the album that is sung by David Gilmour. The rest is a Waters track. This is called Not Now, John, which I just loved all that. Song starts with fuck all that. We've got to get on with these. And then we have these female choir singers come in that are like, fuck all that, fuck all that. And then it just keeps going. And this is a real jammer here. I mean, this is great stuff. I mean, it seems to be about some kind of like global market, some kind of competition with the Japanese and the Americans, and the Russians are mentioned in here. The Vietnamese are mentioned in here. But maybe also a smidge of like an anti-war thing also with some of the places they list. But I just really liked this one. Had a lot of like focused and sustained energy, which I don't feel like you get from a lot of Pink Floyd songs. Definitely was more like music that I would listen to that's not Pink Floyd. And just this one just took me out of, I mean, nowhere with how much I enjoyed this one. So this is Not Now John at my number 3.
Apparently, I need to go back and listen to more of the Final Cut.
That was
I'll
one
be honest,
I
that's. Oh, go ahead, Brett.
I was just gonna say that was another album. I mentioned before there was like albums that just were good throughout, but didn't have like standout tracks. That I did write that note down for this one as well. That I really enjoyed the Final Cut as an album, and it's like one that you'd like need to listen to as a whole. Like
I'll be honest, I had never heard that album before, and I listened to the first like 2 tracks and was like, oh, it's Roger Waters still talking about World War II. I don't think I need to listen to the rest of this.
yeah, it apparently is. It's songs that didn't make it onto the wall. It was like
Yeah,
bunch of
which
like
makes sense. But
I would say this one probably of the album doesn't fit in the most.
okay. I
Like it
mean,
it sounds the most different of what's on this album.
yeah. I mean, I'm looking at the lyrics. It definitely sounds interesting. Like I definitely need to go back and listen to that, but kind of mad at myself for not pushing through. Because after the first couple tracks, I felt like I kind of just knew what that album was going to be, which was more of the same. And it sounds like it's not that entirely.
That was like when I was joking about listening to their last one from 2014, The Endless River, and I was like, I wasn't even paying attention, but I was like 7 songs in, and I was like, no one said anything on this yet.
I was gonna is so I'll be honest, I did not make it all the way through that album either. Are there any vocals on that album?
I want to say there might be one song.
Like, I mean, I liked what I heard of it, but it seemed like it was pretty much all instrumental.
Yeah, I can't remember. I just wrote down that I liked that song Nirvana the best on it, but I
Yeah.
thought maybe there might have been one, but I'm not positive.
All right.
Where are
Well,
we at here? Oh, that was me.
that was you.
That was
That brings
me.
us to our top two.
Top two.
My number two is a song that has already appeared lower on other people's lists. It is off the album Wish You Were Here, and it is a song called Wish You Were Here
Oh,
by the band Pink Floyd.
thanks for that.
Um,
It's very confused.
I know. This is, I mean, I just love this song. I think to me, a lot of it is just, I mean, I love the guitar work on it. It's the rare acoustic Pink Floyd song. Um, I feel like the guitar work is deceptively simple in that anyone who ever picks up a guitar and starts to try to learn it is going to find themselves playing this song at some point, myself included. And like the actual notes, I guess, are fairly simple, but I realized in listening and re-listening to it that there's some magic that David Gilmour pulls off that it's not quite as easy as it seems. There's like an elegant beauty even in the simplicity of what he's playing. Um, so I mean, honestly, for me, a lot of it is about the guitar part. I do like the lyrics quite a bit as well. They're pretty ambiguous, but I feel like they still evoke certain feelings. Again, sort of a sense of like introspection and isolation and like trying to connect with someone else and a sense of longing that is present in a lot of their songs. And also, I love the scatting that David Gilmour does along with the guitar solo, where he's kind of singing the notes as he plays them. But I just feel like this is one of the great songs of all time, and had to be pretty high up on my list.
Well, I'm not going to do it nearly as much justice as Joe just did. But number two for me is also Wish You Were Here off the album
Wow.
Wish You Were Here.
Sappy boys.
I yeah, just like Joe said, the guitar work, especially the opening is so good in this song and so catchy. Um and I think just all the way through the song, just lyrically, vocally, and just musically, I just feel so good all the way through. I really enjoy this song, and it is I do get a lot of like meaning from the lyrics in this one. As you say, they are kind of like, they're not very specific, but they're in a way that it kind of allows it to be meaningful for you and not for necessarily for what they're saying. And yeah, said my not giving it as much, my words aren't as impressive as Joe's are, but number two for me is also Wish You Were Here.
Don't give him that compliment. That's just
Yay!
ridiculous. Follow-up comment here before my number two, Joe. One song apparently has lyrics officially on the album.
Okay.
It's Louder Than Words, which has actual lyrics. There is one or two where they have someone talking just a smidge, but not true
Oh,
lyrics.
gotcha.
I was when I was doing the Google search, I have a Reddit result that popped up on Google. It says, "Am I wrong, or is the Endless River actually pretty great?" And the response says, "It isn't." So there's that.
Amazing.
Okay, my number two is we're headed back to our friendly cash register to go to Money from Dark Side of the Moon here at number two for me. Um, just a lot of fun wordplay in this one. Money's the root of all evil. Nobody's going to give it away. And then, just kind of this idea of I think again commercialism here, and it's just maybe commentary on where society was even just a few years after the 60s and how it's all changing again. This is probably kind of just getting into like what is music's worth? Is it commercial or is it something else? And it's it's both. We got good sax in this, we get good guitar work in this, there's some solos. This was already mentioned a couple times here, or at least once, I think, but I really like this one. It's just really fun. Um, and I have to say before I forget as well, this song is my all-time favorite song for listening to a song in stereo with the two sides.
Mm.
Hmm.
I have to point that out because I always compare other songs that do that, which there's not very many. But this is truly the one. If you can get a good speaker on both sides of you, and it's like, jing, 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 you know, and kind of goes back and forth. Always love that effect about this song. So my number two is Money.
Man loves his saxophone.
I do love a good sax.
Oh boy, this brings us to the number ones. I'm guessing that you could probably guess what my number one will be since I had not mentioned it as of yet.
Endless River, track one.
It is In the Flesh. That's right. So you thought you'd like to go to the show. It's not actually that. I don't know if we can talk about that song in 2024. No, my number one is the song Off the Wall though, and it is Comfortably Numb.
Portably, no.
Uh I don't really know what to say about this song. I think it's one of the greatest songs. I think it's one of the greatest songs ever recorded, if not ever written, which is to say it's there's just something about the performance. Like if you just take the lyrics separately, maybe it's not, super high up there, but just the way everything comes together on the wall on this track, it just hits me in a magical way. Um, I think I could be wrong, but I think it's a rare Pink Floyd track where Roger Waters and David Gilmour are trading off vocals, and you sort of distinctly have Roger Waters singing the verses and David Gilmour singing the chorus. Um, and I mean, Cody, I think you hit on this when you talked about this song, which you ranked criminally low. But
That's probably generously high. Keep going.
oh, I mean, this is one lyrically where the lyrics are, ostensibly. I think Roger Waters said that it was about a specific incident he had where he was having like stomach cramps or something, and they gave
Oh,
him some sort of injection so that he could perform a show during one of their tours. Um, and I mean, ostensibly that's what the lyrics are about, but it feels like it just captures something more universal, like just this feeling of struggling to get through life or like at certain points in life and like maybe relying on things you shouldn't to try to get through it. And then there are the David Gilmour vocal sections, which are kind of looking back to childhood. And I think you had an interesting take on that, Cody. The specific chorus that you referenced has always been my favorite part of the song. When I was a child, I caught a fleeting glimpse out of the corner of my eye. I turned to look, but it was gone. I cannot put my finger on it now. The child is grown, the dream is gone. Um, I mean, I think you're right. It hits on maybe having a perspective when you're a child that you lose as you get older. I also just, to me, it's like there's something kind of eerie about that. Like it's almost like you're maybe more open to like the possibility of magical things in the world when you're a child and you lose that as you get older. Like there's like something about the world, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, the moral of the story is the guitar solo is amazing, and that's what the song's really about. No, I mean, the guitar solo is like its own thing. Like it's one of the greatest guitar solos ever recorded. It's just simply iconic. I think the tone that David Gilmour has on his guitar in this song, my brother once described it as being like a hot knife cutting through butter. And I think it really stands out because musically the rest of the song is pretty like low key, like kind of on a more down level. And then all of a sudden there's just this like searing guitar kicks in. And I was listening to it recently and I thought about something that I mentioned when we talked about Guns N' Roses, that Slash said that he always tries to make his solos add something to the song. Like he doesn't play guitar solos to just show off, and he doesn't want something that's like unnecessarily long or distracts from the song. And I feel like in this context, this specific guitar solo really just elevates the mood of the song, and it just wouldn't be the same without that solo. It's absolutely iconic. I think it's probably one of the more influential guitar solos of all time. I know a lot of artists have tried to capture that tone and just the feel of it. Um, Including Jason Isbell, just had to work him in there. Um, I mean, he has a song off of his second to last album that he has said was like specifically kind of trying to cop the sound from this solo. But man, this is just one of the greatest songs of all time. I'll just leave it at that.
It's at least their sixth best song of all time. So you got that. Good choice.
Okay, number one.
Ooh,
Here.
intrigue.
I I I couldn't put anything else here in this spot for me. It's just so damn iconic. And it is the proper listing of this song, which is Another Brick in the Wall Part 1, Another Brick in the Wall Part 2, and the meat of Happiest Days of Our Lives sandwiched in between. um and this is I mean, this is the version that I've heard on the radio a million times. You know, in with all the parts put together. Um and
I don't think I've ever heard part one on the radio. I feel like they always just play part two.
really, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, that's probably, and, you know, as I said, like these songs I've heard so many times, you know, through my middle years that, and that's the way I've heard it. So, you know, that's what sticks out most to me. And so, like, this one is just the lyrics and the way they're delivered have like so much power behind them. There's just like a lot of anger there that you feel, and they're also just really rebellious, which is not a typical Floyd thing necessarily. To be like straightforwardly like F the man kind of stuff. And I think because of that, you know, the lyrics and the delivery specifically, like I kind of feel like this is their hardest rocking song in their whole collection. I would kind of like went back, and after I wrote that comment down, I went back and kind of thought about it, and like musically, I don't know that I would agree with that. Like the guitar is not that hard hitting, and like I think the bass line is pretty strong, but just all in all, it just feels like it is a much stronger rock song than probably anything else they have. Um, and the other thing I wrote in there was like you wouldn't immediately think that using children in a song would improve it, but in this one it does. So I just every time this song comes on, I love it. I enjoy it. Um, and I say it's just iconic, and one of those things that growing up for me was like a staple of my music. So had to go number one. It is Another Brick in the Wall, the complete. Not well. You could agree. You could argue because there's a third part that the third part. See, like the third part they don't play for on the radio for me ever that I ever really heard.
No.
You know,
Well,
so
I mean, I feel like the third part is like fairly removed from the other two on the album.
yeah, it is like a different sound for sure.
Cody, what is your number one?
All right, my number one song is off Umagumma. It's called Careful with That Axe, Eugene. It's song number two off Umagumma. I just like the name of the song. I didn't actually listen to it. And we're up. No, my number one, I mean, if we take all these lyrics they have about growing older and life and all of these things, I was told once upon a time, a long time ago, that life is nothing but a combination of time and money. And therefore, my top two tracks are actually, coincidentally, Time and Money. Time is my number one song off Dark Side of the Moon. I just really love how much the 2 minutes and 19 seconds of clocks at the beginning annoyed Joe. That was the first thing that made a positive on this one for me. No, but it's interesting on this one. It says this is the only song off of Dark Side of the Moon that actually credits all four of the band members as having a hand in making this one. And the chorus in this one is sung by Richard Wright. That's kind of something different with Gilmour on lead vocals here. Guitar solo in the middle. I think everybody knows this one just from the beginning with the ticking away the moments to make up a dull day. And then kind of going through, this seems to be another song here by Gilmour, just kind of talking about like life goes fast and, instead of looking at it and wondering like what we lost as a kid, this is kind of like you wake up as an adult and just realize like you're half dead. And this one probably hits as much but differently as it did when I listened to it 20 years ago, because now as I'm the ripe old age of 43 listening to this one, and I am shorter of breath and one day closer to death, as it says here in the song. And
You
I
sure are,
didn't
old man.
I didn't see when they shot the starting gun, damn it. So I should have started going earlier, but time is fleeting and it's what it is. So every year is getting shorter, ain't that the truth? Never seem to find the time.
I do have to say that this song hit me really hard when I was re-listening recently, and it's crazy because it's crazy the perspective that it has because they were probably like in their 20s when they wrote and recorded this song.
Yeah, I think some liner notes here said Gilmore was about 29 when he got this. I don't know if that's when he wrote it or when it came out, but
Hmm,
yeah, so it is a bit early to kind of have the perspective, but basically said he was, he didn't really know where he was going at the time.
yeah.
Just a great song. Again, like Brett mentioned before, really good on both of these time and money use of the sound effects that they played around with earlier in their career, but here they really enhanced the song. And as a lead in, it's pretty cool. It really gets your attention, I think, with the clocks here and everything else going on. And in total there, that gives me four tracks off of Dark Side of the Moon on my 10. I almost had five, but a lot of it I think honestly does come from watching The Wizard of Oz with this and just seeing these lyrics and hearing them now and like picturing scenes in my head of like how it matches up and stuff's kind of crazy. So I'm definitely doing this now. I've decided we're definitely doing this at the house here. So that's my number one. It's time. Ba-da-ba.
All right. Good
Yay.
pick.
Thanks.
I
Well, I don't know.
honestly I had a really hard time picking an individual track off of Dark Side of the Moon, which is why I ended up with only one. Like it's weird as a whole album, it's incredible. Like it's probably, one of the better albums of all time. But I feel like for me, it does just flow together so much that it is harder to just pick one track out.
Yeah, I had that same problem at first, and then I think probably just like my history and bias kind of eventually won out, and some of the songs made it up on the 10 here. As I was cutting, it was really hard. I think I originally had like 6 or 7 songs off the Division Bell in my 35, and I ended up cutting all of them by the time I got to
Oh,
the top 10, which was kind of surprising. The Wall also, I think I had 6 or 7 songs, and I ended up trimming those down to one too. So kind of
wanted to
crazy.
ask, as we kind of wrap things up, what did you guys think of the post Roger Waters work? So like everything after the final cut, I guess.
Well, none of it made my 10, so
That's
there's
fair.
that. I'm trying to think what was all in there. The
So it's the
instrumental album at the end. What else?
The Division Bell, A Momentary Lapse of Reason, and then
Hmm.
the last album, I think, are the three.
I think I
Mhm.
had a song off the Momentary Lapse of Reason at first, but that also I can't think which one it was though. But it didn't stand out to me as much, I will say.
Yeah. That's just, I mean, I have to acknowledge that Roger Waters is kind of notoriously an egotistical asshole and
Hmm.
possibly an anti-Semite. Uh, he's a problematic individual. And honestly, I mentioned before, I've always kind of liked David Gilmour's vocals more. Obviously, the guitar is a huge part of the appeal for me. But going through and listening to all these albums, I do think that they kind of needed each other, even though they didn't realize it at the time. I feel like the post Roger Waters, I put three songs on my list. Like, I think there are some good tracks, but by and large, I feel like post Roger Waters, it was much more about the music than it was the lyrics, as evidenced on the last album. And I feel like, Roger Waters has had a solo career since parting ways with the band. And it's kind of the opposite side where it seems like he's more focused on writing lyrics and putting his opinions out there and doesn't seem to care so much about like having music that anybody really wants to listen to. So it's kind of, I feel like it's often the case when bands split up like this, even if members of the band continue without an original member, where it's just never the same. And like, even if they go off and have solo careers or whatever, the quality of the work is just never as good as when they were working together.
Mhm.
Yeah.
One thing I had heard or read during my research here was that uh Waters is has been like historically just been a much more uh like more depressive person. And I think you can really kind of feel that in the post Waters albums where it's a bit more, the tones are lighter, the songs are a bit more
Yeah.
lighter, and there's definitely not so much bite to them. And I think that stands out pretty clearly.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, they definitely the tone overall is often a lot more uplifting.
Hmm.
And like even, one of the songs that I put on my list, on the Turning Away, which is kind of a protest song, it's pretty generic and like you said, it just does not have the bite of something that Roger Waters would have written.
Hmm.
So I definitely agree with that.
I was looking in the background here, checking like the actual impact of Pink Floyd in like measurable terms, which is hard to do. And I was trying to look up like albums sold, which I've done before on multiple occasions, and I know it's just a really hard metric to actually find an answer to if you can go to 10 websites and get 10 different lists. But um they have, what is this? This is chartmasters.org, but on this one they're listed in seventh, only behind the Beatles, Michael Jackson, Elvis Presley, Queen, Madonna, and the Rolling Stones. And they are very close to Madonna and the Rolling Stones on albums sold. Wikipedia has them in ninth behind the Beatles, Elvis, Michael Jackson, Elton John, Queen, Madonna, Led Zeppelin. An entry that I cannot explain and have some questionable math on this, which is Rihanna
What?
at number eight.
What?
Uh,
But the number they list there is not seemingly possible because they have her as having sold 70 million more than the Beatles, which I don't think is correct. She's also not in the correct order by how this is actually sorted, so I think that's an error. And then they have Pink Floyd right after that. So, but they
Where
are
is
in
Taylor
the
Swift in all this?
on Wikipedia she's 12th, Pink Floyd is ninth, and on this other one, T Swift is 15th, and Pink Floyd is seven. So. However, Taylor Swift is very young, so she has a great chance to catch up to most of this list that's left ahead of her.
That's true.
I mean, the Beatles are pretty far away from everybody else here, but and then I was also just going to mention too, like if you're a Pink Floyd fan, I can't really understand this, but according to one website I'm on here, re-releases and like hidden things and live concerts and whatnot in the last 10 years. So from 2014 to 2024, Pink Floyd has released 17 new albums
What?
in the last 10 years, according to the lyrics website I am on. But again, I don't think they're actively making anything. It's
Uh,
just
Have
reusing their music in different ways.
Speaking of remasters and whatnot, have either of you guys heard any of Roger Waters's remake of Dark Side of the Moon?
No.
That I
no.
think it just came out last year.
Oh,
Don't I mean listen to it out of
yeah.
morbid curiosity. It's one of the worst things I've ever heard in my life. Like it further proves
Interesting.
how much he like actually needs David Gilmour to balance him out.
Mm.
Like he basically took Dark Side of the Moon, added more lyrics to it.
Oh, I was going to ask.
There are no guitar solos on it,
Oh,
and it's
Wow.
largely kind of just like spoken word. Like he's not even trying to sing. It's just him talking. I'd say it's worth, listening to like 30 seconds of, but
yeah, I'll
it's
have to
just
check that out.
bizarre.
Yeah, it sounds interesting though. I would look into that. So there we go. That's all I have. Anything else from you guys on Pink Floyd or today or tonight? Here we go.
Well, I do have a top three based
Oh,
on our selections here.
yes.
So we definitely scattered our selections about. There were I don't even know here, one, two, there were like about a dozen songs, no more than that, maybe 15 songs that only one of us chose.
Hmm.
Wow.
Um, and but our top three are fairly close. Sneaking in at number three with Cody's last number one selection there is Time with 18
Woo.
points. At number two with 21 points is Wish You Were Here. And taking the top spot tonight with 22 points, just barely edging out Wish You Were Here, is Comfortably Numb.
Yeah, suck it, Cody.
I ranked it. What are you whining about?
Those were the only two songs that all three of us picked.
Not my fault you guys
Wow.
are sad boys. Come on.
It's true. I'm the saddest boy.
I mean, they're good songs. They were both on my list, so
It definitely one thing to note is like I didn't, I mean, I heard all these songs for so many years and I knew they had a lot of good songs, but like I didn't realize like there's like 15 or 20 songs on here that are like really, really good songs. And like I like listening to the albums that I hadn't heard before. I did steal a few of those off there and put them on the list, but there's just no way to sneak them in the top 10 for me, with all these juggernauts I've had in my life. So
Yeah.
yeah, I was surprised how many songs I knew, but like I said, I had no idea the names of a lot of them. It would come
mm,
on and I'd just see the track list and the next song would come on and be like 10 seconds in and be like, oh, this is this
yeah, it's like
song.
I know this song. I've heard
Yeah,
this a bunch of times.
basically,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, great. Anything else tonight? That was a fun one. That was a fun
Go
week.
Taylor Swift at the Super Bowl. What?
No. Boo.
Uh,
Got to root for the 49ers, even though they beat our Lions, but
I don't care about the Super Bowl,
you
and
just
I
want to win money.
I do just want to win money. Even though I am a devout Swiftie, I give zero craps about who she's having relations with and
Stupping, we prefer the term stupping.
who she's stooping. And I think it's ridiculous that a lot of people are cheering for the Chiefs just because they're Taylor Swift fans. It makes no
it's
freaking
yeah.
sense. But
I won't even get into my feelings on that whole debate.
eh.
So there we go. All right. Well, it is Super Bowl Sunday as we're recording this, so we are going to do a very rare
Oh no.
let everybody off the hook tonight with no game to play. I'm not putting anybody on the spot tonight. So there we go.
Hooray.
It's a Super Bowl miracle, Festivus miracle. So there we go. All right, I think we have some possible video game podcasts coming up sometime soon here. It's kind of interesting behind the scenes. We have several groups of hosts playing different games, so it might just be who finishes what game first as far as where we're headed to next with all this. If nobody gets it done, then we'll probably pop up with some other topic here randomly for next week. But until then, This has been Friends Occasionally. Not disagreeing. The Font Pod, the Fontcast. That's Joe, that's Brett. We'll see you later.
Bye.
See you next time.